Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast with Thomas Siersbæk. He's co-founder and CEO at CosBits and CostAdvisory.com. He's in Denmark, soon to be in Italy. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. We've been talking about climbing mountains, both of us mountaineers, uh, Everest, the four big Alps, and so forth. So cool guy altogether. He's an entrepreneur and an investor. He's also a family man and loves climbing mountains in his free time and going at large in the adventure. Apparently, Denmark is flat. I didn't know that, so need to move south when he decides to go on an adventure. This podcast is brought to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start scale, be invited to podcast, you can go to podbuyer.com. Thomas, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. So I think beyond going somewhere south, hopefully tomorrow, and actually see some real mountains, I think we spent all our time on trying to build not just one, but two companies. One is supposed to be funding the other. So our key business really is CostBits, which is a B2B SaaS tool within the procurement space for what we define as mid-sized markets, trying to get transparency in how you spend your money. And then, the end goal really, and when we're done with it, hopefully in a couple of years, and we have thousands of users, is to make sure that whatever you're buying, you know what it costs, what to buy, but also you can preferably make a more green choice. So not just based on money, but also based on your footprint, right? And the second business that we're also building, which is one that really funds this game here, is CostAdvisory, which is a consultancy business within procurement supply chain. It's very much a freelance network because what I found was that I'm a lot better at selling, obviously, myself and people that I kind of like myself. And now I just turned 50, so I prefer to sell people with a lot of industry experience. So we basically set up saying, it's a freelance network for purely B2B, of course, procurement supply chain, minimum 15 years of industry experience. That's what the candidates have to have. And either I need to know them or at least I need to know them in like second layer. All right, so it does limit it. It means we do have a couple of hundred that we can use in here. So, and I think that seems to be working. So we do a lot of these gigs where we do like 1-2-man shows, go out, we get very operational, try to solve something that's actually real for the clients, and then use that funding to feed back into CostBits and keep on our product development. Right.
Love the model.
Beat the beast somehow.
Yeah. Your background is quite fascinating because you started in sales and then you went on to work for Maersk or however that's pronounced, that huge container company as a CTO for decades ish. So tell us about that transition from sales to being technical and the importance of eventually being full stack as a founder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I think at that point in time, of course, being a lot younger, I had no idea where I would be 20, 30 years later. So I did not make a career plan or like a life journey direction plan at all. I just kind of took everything on a whim. And then if it felt right, I would do it. So I started the first 8-10 years within sales marketing, purely in the IT business, doing like professional services, selling consultants, selling hardware, bigger solutions, that kind of stuff. And then I'm old enough to remember the Y2K thing, which was great because nothing happened, but we sold a whole lot of consultants. We made a lot of money on that one. And then 2001, the party kind of stopped, right? Because the bubble burst and then nobody had any money. So we went from being like super hyped, we can sell anything with a pulse, to suddenly nobody wants to hire anybody and all your friends basically got sacked. So that environment also in Denmark and Europe changed dramatically pretty much overnight. So I hung around for a couple of years and I was like, okay, I got to look somewhere else. I was getting close to 30 and I was like, okay, if I need to take a look at a different type of industry, which is not within IT and maybe also change, functional paths from sales, I should try something else, right? And then I'm a pretty extrovert person. So I just called my friends and said, okay, what else is going on with me? Like any good ideas, any directions, and most are like, yeah, just stay where you are because it's a lot safer. And I said, that's the only thing I don't want to do, right? So I do not want to stay where I'm. That is not the advice I was looking for. And then, of course, if you call enough people, somebody will give you a lead on something. And then somebody, I still don't remember who it was, basically said that Maersk was looking for, procurement people in kind of a new department. And I had a vague idea about what on earth procurement was. I'm coming from sales. I met him a few times. It was not a pleasant experience because I would typically not win those deals. very difficult to persuade. They always seem to be kind of angry at me, these procurement people. But anyway, I felt, okay, maybe I can bring something to the table by coming from sales and going on like the procurement purchase side. I mean, the other side of the table, it should be the flip side of the same coin. So in true sales spirit, I basically just call them up, right? So I mean, this is a huge company that have like 110,000 employees. So just call the reception saying, hey, you're looking for somebody in procurement. And this very, very friendly lady said, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, okay, very useful. I think it has something to do with purchasing. She's like, okay, that I know. And then she basically punched me through to somebody in purchasing. And then randomly, I kind of spoke my way into an interview the same afternoon, took my bike, which is what you do in Denmark in there. And then we chatted a couple of times and I started 6 months later. And then I had a 12-year spree in Maersk, right? Starting in operational purchasing, then procurement, then moved to Cape Town to build the regional procurement department, then a bit of stint in Madrid, then The Hague, and then back. And then I took up a work stream lead role where basically I was CTO for a subset within Maersk, not the entire thing. I think that's an important notion here. But we didn't know where the container was unless they were on a vessel. As soon as we got off the vessel, it would be on a truck somewhere. We couldn't really track it. And we just had this nagging feeling that if we can do something smart about where they are, we can probably get them empty, get them back into the flow so we can put some stuff into them so we can make some more money, right? And, if you have 2.5 million, maybe 3 million containers to manage, speeding up that cycle just a bit, that's a lot of money, right? So I spent 4 years on basically building a corporate startup from me and 2 junior guys and a whiteboard. And I think we were about 130, 140 people 4 years later, and a couple of hundred, maybe I think 700, 800, freelance people working on either on the IT side, doing development or doing like the implementation of it, building the GSM network. So I think that was fun. Going from 3 people to, I'd say, probably 1,000-ish and having a real product 4 years later. And then I stopped in Maersk because then I think I needed to sleep, to be honest. So that was really the journey, right?
Yeah. And in the meanwhile, you've also been members at various chambers of commerce, and you've also did a 5-year stint at PwC.
Yeah, I did. So after Maersk, this is kind of like, it's kind of like pre-product launch. We just had a pre-kid thing, right? So married to my still wonderful wife. And we said, okay, so we need to be expatriated again for the 4th time. And we want to go somewhere that's not close to friends and family in Europe. It should probably be now before we have kids, right? And so I basically just picked up the phone one day when a headhunter called me from, a completely, at least for me, unknown company in Asia. And then we ended up moving to Bangkok, and we lived out there for a couple of years. And then moved back to Europe because then we did have our first daughter, and the second one just 1 year later. And I joined PwC. So I had 5 years in PwC and built up operations department in there. Did some buyouts, did some mergers, had a wonderful team of other senior people that we were leading it together. And we did procurement, supply chain. And I think what I learned from that journey was, I think your point about being full stack, that's not something that you can eat, but you can try to plan for it, but at least I did not, right? But looking back, I think it was very healthy for me to start in sales and know that if you can't sell it, it doesn't exist, right? Like, who cares? I think a lot of people start in product and think maybe it'll sell. That's not the case, right? You got to know your clients first. You got to know the need in the market. So I got the sales piece. I know exactly what I want to build. I want to build something that will help these people within procurement where I spend so much time. I know I want to do it via tech. So that gave me a lot of these components, right? And then doing consultancy for the last, what is it now, 7, 8 years, just gives you a massive footprint. So every time we had an idea to the product, I would just call somebody. We'll do a mock-up. We'll just, we'll do a Teams meeting, a Zoom call. We'll just show up because Denmark is a small country, and we'll just take the car, go out there, say, how about this? What do you think? Does it make sense? And then sometimes they'll laugh at us. And other times they'll say, maybe not, but you can tweak it. Maybe we can get something out of it. So we did a lot of this test, trial, and error just by, the first deal I closed, I basically closed on an animated PowerPoint, right? It looked right, but we didn't have any code, none. They kind of knew it, right? So it's fair, but yeah, that was huge help. So we've been asking for help and feedback continuously since we started this gig a long time ago. So I think it helps to have a bit of runway before you can do this. There's a lot of people to reach out to.
So Cost Advisory is feeding CostBits.
Yes.
The middleman fee that you charge to find advisors or to do it yourself, like what is it? Give me the economics, how much clients you have, how much can a consulting quote unquote business like this one do on a monthly basis?
So normally we just have a couple of handful of FTEs doing the consulting business, and that more than feeds what we need now to keep CostBits running for it. And then, we don't have a fixed fee set up for what we charge on top of the freelancers. And the reason for not doing that is that sometimes it makes sense to just take a cut, like take 15, 10%, because you have the leads, you sign off, we do the coverage, we do the invoicing, that kind of stuff. And other times it just makes sense to help somebody get a gig, and then something might come back. I think that's a key learning also, I mean, in general in life, but also in this whole startup journey, is that I think we've been asking for a ton of favors out there. Anything, right? Product market fit feedback, pricing feedback, tech stack feedback, you name it. We've been asking for favors, right? And people have been happily giving it. So we're trying to give back. So if somebody comes and say, hey, do you have a lead on something, and we think they need it, we'll try to help them out. And then maybe something comes back, maybe something doesn't come back. We'll just charge enough where it makes sense for us to make sure we can feed CostBits. But the idea is not to charge a lot and make that like the core business, because over time it will be CostBits more than the cost advisory, right? That's kind of the give and take for us right now.
Interesting. And I'm guessing at least like 30 to 50K per month is what that business generates. What are the costs to this?
Yeah, I think it generates a bit more. The costs are really, really low, right? Because we are 100% remote, so we have almost no cost, right? So so when it comes to cost, most of what we have is our own time. Of course, we got freelancers to pay, right? But we make a dividend based on them, so I think that's fair enough. But if you look at our actual fixed cost, it's almost nothing. We got a bit of operational cost from the license stack, but it's pretty much nothing, right? So we easily make like 40, 50K a month on this, and then put that back into product development and market fit.
Right. And when do you feel that CosBits will be able to fly by itself?
Well, the target is we're doing a new version launch the 15th of April. We're going to send out to a couple of existing clients and to a couple of interested potential leads and a few friends and family out there in this procurement supply chain space. We're only going to give it to people that we know will give us very direct, uncandid feedback, because that's really what you need to do good product development. And then the target is either before summer or just after summer to do a full launch. And then hopefully we can start living up this, in about a year or so.
So fully bootstrap, no funding intention.
The only funding we have right now is by Microsoft, actually, and that's because we're part of the startup program. So we just hit tier 4 about a couple of weeks ago. So thanks for that, Microsoft. That's really been saving us, right? So we're using entirely their stack for most of this. A lot of Azure credits that we otherwise really couldn't pay for, right? That's also why we have such a low cost base as it is, right? We did go through the full funding round actually 2 years ago, so I think maybe that's worth mentioning. So we started looking for funding, most because coming from PwC and knowing a lot of startup guys. I mean, I've done a lot of pre-funding support before for other companies, a lot of M&A and carve-outs and mergers. And I was like, I think we need this because it's going to be super expensive to build this product, right? We had not yet set up like a consulting feeding line for it. So we did start the funding. We had hundreds of interviews and meetings. It was going well. We got a few bits in there. They were kind of okay. And then Putin decided to bomb Ukraine, right? And then hell froze over. For me and for everybody else, right? And then the whole funding cycle just got really complicated. So instead of people wanting to fund fintechs, they were super busy trying to do bridging rounds. So at some point we just said, we can probably get more funding. We can probably do that. But it's going to take so much of our time away from what we actually want to get funding for, which is our product, that we decided to say, we will need to do a different path. So when it comes to a funding journey, we just completely froze it on ice. We said, okay, let's assume we don't get anything. Let's assume we can focus our 200% efforts on either doing more consultancy sales and scale it up, which is what we did. That's why we established Cost Advisory as like a real thing, not just like an ad hoc thing on the side. And then spend the rest of the time on making sure that we do all the coding that we need to make sure we have a good product as soon as we can, right? So we basically just doubled down on it. and said, we're definitely not gonna, no funding. It's not gonna kill us because we know we can do consultancy. We've done that, me and my co-founder Christian, for a long time. So we know we can at least feed ourselves. We just need to make more in not a super scalable way that we can also feed the rest of this monster. So that's what we're doing, right?
Love it. Your GTM strategy, what does it look like? How do you get your clients in both businesses?
I think that's still being developed. One thing that we do know is how we're gonna at least onboard our clients now. So I think we're selling a product that normally has easy, 4 to 6 month sales cycle, probably a couple of months of onboarding cycle, which is not scalable, right? So we're not going to go down that route. So we basically took a look at it and saying, okay, we think we can, if we can do enough lead gen, which we have not nailed yet. So probably you guys can help us more about feedback on that. We can ourselves. We're not mature in that space yet. We can get enough lead gen. The ambition is for us to onboard our clients in a few minutes, not in a few months, right? Let them in there, let them test it out, get all this hardcore data hard-coded. So that's really, so we're very much a data company, right? So for us, the tricky thing is that we read all the information in our clients' ERP systems, and we need to read that super fast. So if you sign up, in a few seconds, you have something to look at in our UX, right? And that's just not as easy as it sounds. So that's really where all the efforts is. So the go-to-market for us very much is we want to be sure that we can present simple trials, a free version of it, so we can convert more leads. How we generate the leads, we don't know yet. Right now, we still use network for it. We have a pipeline to build first.
Right. And cost advisory clients, do they eventually become CostBits clients?
Some of them may be, but the cost advisory clients tends to be, top tier clients because they're used to buying consultancies. Consultants are not cheap, right? We kind of be on the expensive side, where the market we're looking for CostBits is actually one tier lower. Very much like the top of the middle market is what we're going for. So once in a while, we may have a bit of an overlap, but we don't expect a huge overlap. But the good thing is because of the cost advisory, one, we can self-fund this baby and we can get more people out there to work. We can have a good cash flow. But I think equally important is a lot of the stuff that you would need in procurement, supply chain, finance in a top tier organization is something that you also need in like a larger mid-size organization, but in a different shape and format because you have a smaller team. They may be just a bit more constrained in general on resources and training and systems and tech stack, right? So we need something that is just faster and simpler for them to use, but solves what you want to solve if you are one of the big guys. Right? So we get a lot of product information that we then need to sift through to make it available for normal people.
Interesting. What does your sales cycle looks like nowadays with cost advisory? Like, is it around 120 days to close a sale? And I would assume your LTV is around 50K.
Yeah, so I think our LTV is definitely higher than that. It's probably double than that, actually, to be honest. Our sales cycle, because it's advisory, it very much depends. So I think I'm doing a couple of gigs right now, and I think one took like 5 days to land because they had a need and they called us up and we had time and we had known each other like before. So it's just very simple. It's basically just call up if you got time for it, we got a gig for you. And then we have other sales cycles that would easily take us like 3, 4, 5 months, and the client will change their needs as we mature, that discussion with them, right? So we often get calls where people say, hey, you did this for me like 5 years ago. I want something that's kind of the same. And then we sit and talk to them and they're like, they don't really need the same. They need something different, right? And then that maturity cycle just can take months. And then, hopefully we land some of them, right?
And what's your ROI to these clients? Let's say that they pay you like 5, 10K per month each. Like, how much will they get back from working with you?
Oh, they'll get a lot more back. So if you look at the CostBits, I know that's the SaaS product, right? We're looking at an ROI for them that's easy, more than 50 times our cost, preferably higher. We're looking at 50 to 100. I think the first test clients we were closer to 100. Not just because we were cheap, but that is the point. We want to have a low price point, but just because these organizations, they have so much opportunity. When it comes to the advisory side in cost advisory, it's a bit more difficult because a lot of what we do is helping them fuel the process that they have in there, right? I think one of the gigs I'm doing now, if you do a quick math, I probably have a payback about 40, 45 times my cost. So the payback is huge, right?
So
But still,
they
when they
just
look at
make
my bills, they
better,
think they're still high.
yeah, they just make better procurement decisions, so they don't give out free money, basically.
Basically, right? So, yeah. So most of what you and this is it's kind of like cheating to be an advisor, right? Because I've typically had the jobs where I help people get better. But because I'm external, I can look at this with fresh eyes. So it's kind of like when, when we're building our product, when I get stuck in something, or when I think I have something that really works, I'm going to call somebody that I trust, and they'll look at it with fresh external eyes. And sometimes they like it, other times they hate it, but they'll give me feedback that I cannot generate myself. As an advisor, I do the same thing. Plus, of course, I have a much larger footprint of, gaining knowledge and insights. But honestly, most of the advisory we do is just the fact that we don't have your job right now, but we used to have it, and we're like 2 steps disconnected from it. So we can give you feedback you cannot see yourself, right? And we normally say that people get lost, right? So that's our job, is to guide them, right? But we run very different projects. If it's a turnaround, larger transformation project, it's a lot more about piggybacking on having hundreds of clients before. All right, so we know what we're seeing. That learning is very different. That's not something you can just encapsulate on a PowerPoint. And other times it's a pure coaching situation. One of the gigs I'm running now is very much on coaching. This is very much saying, I've had your job. I think you can do this. I'm going to ask you 50 questions. Some of them will stick. Some of them will make sense. Others, you're going to be laughing me out of the room and they don't fit. And it's all right. But the 2 or 3 questions that really fits, they will change how you work with your cost and with your suppliers. And that will give you impact.
Very cool, Tom. Where can people find out more about you?
I think they can connect with me on LinkedIn, just Thomas Siersbæk Heller-Njor. It's kind of a long one. Maybe you can go to the notes somewhere. If not, I think the easy way is just to go to costbits.com. That's COSTBITS.com, and just connect with me in there and just write me an email.